of the process, Parliament will be able to conduct an ad hoc investigation into this issue that's multidisciplinary in the same way as an interministerial committee would then follow on. I would argue that ultimately it will lead to senior, whether it is the Minister of Police or whether it is whoever else is implicated, having to vacate their position for a temporary period until we clarify these allegations. Because it puts the Minister of Police in a particular position where if the allegations are to be held, they are of a serious nature to suggest that he acted to protect other politicians by suspending crucial units, by ultimately making sure that particular directorates or posts were not being funded or filled. And therefore, this cannot be something that we leave behind. It is common cause that there are profound vacancies within the senior ranks of the police. And therefore, the call right now is that for an urgent proclamation by the president to put an SIU investigation on the table and let Parliament be furnished with that report so that an ad hoc committee can consider it.
Does Parliament have the capacity to do that? I mean, to have an investigation of that nature? I mean, just 5th of March, we're hearing from the briefing that General Mkhwanazi was in Parliament, the crime intelligence was in Parliament. They couldn't uncover this. It had to be Mkhwanazi himself who did the briefing and spilled the beans.
The seriousness of it requires an ad hoc committee post facto. And I'm not saying that it would have to be furnished really by what the SIU does. And if we can find money for any other program of government, whether that be a national dialogue or whether it be whatever, this will require particular and specialized funding so that the allegations do not carry on for months on end. The stipulated time period cannot be longer than within the number of months, so that this doesn't carry on for years with a minister who has allegations and a general who's making allegations. This is not sustainable. If you want to destroy the rule of law in this country, allow these to go unchallenged, uninvestigated, and unsettled. If the minister is in the clear, we need to get to that as a matter of urgency. Therefore, I'm calling on the president to act with immediacy that those terms of references be tabled so that an investigation can continue. Parliament will create the capacity to do so. And if an ad hoc committee has to sit over a period of time, this is of such an urgent material nature in a country where murder is riddling the country at 64 people being murdered daily, that you cannot simply allow that political killings must continue, murder must continue without any deliberate and intentional action. This is not about making public statements. It's about the president acting in the interest of the rule of law in this country. We lose this battle to criminal syndicates or to drug pins. I will assure the people of this country we will be well on our way to a banana republic. Therefore, I'm calling on an SIU investigation urgently.
I'm calling for a widespread suspension of all involved. I mean, we know for sure that the minister's name comes up, the Deputy National Police Commissioner's name comes up, but I mean, we are hearing allegations of the judiciary also involved, prosecutors also involved, metros also involved, some members of parliament also involved, and public officials also involved. Where do you begin with the suspensions?
It's the extent thereof, and I think given that General Mkhwanazi is well within the police, let's begin there and let's ask the SIU to guide us as to where is the severity of the allegations, if any, and ultimately, where there's material evidence to begin with that there is such evidence, those people must be suspended. Because the nature of a suspension is driven in such a way that it allows that the person being suspended cannot influence the investigation process. So if there are senior generals within the police that are implicated, they must be suspended with immediate effect. In this instance, that will require the president to take deliberate action, where ultimately you can put another minister in place and move the current one out of position so that they are not materially influencing an investigation. But at this point in time, it is important that we get to the veracity and whether the authenticity of what General Mkhwanazi is saying. And that is why I'm asking for an SIU investigation with immediate effect.
I'm anticipating counter allegations. And in fact, Shadrack Sibiya has already put forward some counter allegations against General Mkhwanazi. He might also need to be suspended.
And precisely that. So you don't want to be living in a place where you are running a parallel witch hunt where people can make statements in public. Because let's understand the first thing here. Here's a general who is speaking from the police outside the protocol of police. That already means the situation has moved from a casual one to now an absolutely serious one of a national crisis. Therefore, that's why an investigation has to be proclaimed immediately. And those where there's veracity must immediately be suspended. And where there are counter allegations, they mustn't be done so that you can, if you like, muddy the waters. What is required is that provide the veracity of evidence, demonstrate to the people, and I would argue within 30 days, members must begin to be suspended, because then the police, the SIU, will be able to establish what is significant and what is insignificant, and what is material and which is not, so that we can move. And where there are judiciary that are involved here, that's why an ad hoc or a multidisciplinary approach will require that the judge president, certainly the chief justice, must be consulted on this issue, because if there are members, certainly within the high courts, that are implicated, particularly in Gauteng, that intentional action must be put on the table. And those judges cannot continue to serve on the bench. They must be suspended. Otherwise, every judgment they take from today henceforth will always be seen in the light of the allegations that General Mkhwanazi is making. Therefore, this is a matter we cannot sit back as a people of South Africa and simply say, well, it's his word versus their word. It needs us to investigate. We've long suspected, many of us, that there are criminal elements who have political cover and therefore crime continues. Now we hold the absolute view we cannot sit back any longer as the people of this country. Let the SIU get to the bottom of it.
Directly within your purview, I mean, there are also allegations of funding, resources being redirected. Is that something that you can immediately look into?
All the statements that have been made by General Mkhwanazi, I'll certainly be looking at the appropriations that are met. We'll be writing to the Ministry of Police, Defense, and even the Gauteng provincial government, must give legitimacy as to what happened to those task teams, what happened to those funds, particularly in the political killings task team, where there were allocation of funds. We need to get to the bottom of and so certainly within my purview, I'll be writing to all the respective places.